I wanted to change gears slightly and get into something a little bit more technical, and that's movement self-organization. So you and I are both physical therapists. We commonly see people that present with, particular movement behaviors or positions. And I think one of the most pervasive ideas in our industry is that there's a bad posture or a bad position, right? Like extension, anterior pelvic tilt, rotation, what have you.
Forward head.
Sure.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
My favorite.
Eye contact with the camera there.
Yep.
So I think there's this idea that there are these bad postures and people have bad postures, and well, just swap it out for a good posture and they're going to be good to go. Something you and I have talked about before is these postures, positions, movement behaviors emerge in order to solve a particular problem. To manage gravity, to breathe, to better prepare you for a training stressor that you've experienced before. So I guess, how do you think about replacing a less than ideal movement behavior or pattern with a better one? Because that's kind of what we do with these resets, with these drills to regain mobility.
Yeah.
And how do you think about making that intervention, like, quote unquote, sticky enough so that a person doesn't revert back as quickly as possible?
I don't think it's replacing one for another. I think the key is giving more options.
Okay.
So, for example, if we go with like the forward head, I'm sitting at the chair for an extended period of time. You do that long enough, something might get cranky, just because of tissue ischemia or whatever. At the same time, if you sit perched upright and have a good posture, and you hold that long enough, you could probably run into similar issues. But if you can get into each of those and a bazillion more, well, then you're never really overloading any specific areas, and I think it makes you more adept to surviving in several different environments. And I think really that's the key. I mean, that's like what movement variability is all about, is you need as many different ways to perform the task as possible, even if you're getting the same consistent output. So like if I did 10 squats, and even though they looked exactly the same to the naked eye, if I have true movement variability, there should be subtle differences with each one of those squats. But it's when I don't have those options available that problems ensue.
Yeah, and both coordinative and endpoint variability.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's really where the money is. Now, how do we get that to stick? It's basically getting people into positions that they can't normally get into or struggle maintaining into, and then being able to demonstrate that at progressive intensities and complexities. So, for example, if we look at you, and because we worked together for a minute, in the beginning we started with some simple drills, some single leg positions, more supportive, really emphasize breathing, and look at where you're at when we worked together the other day. Yeah. Now we're giving you loaded-based strategies.
Just kicking ass, taking names.
Yeah. Getting you a ridiculous pump. But the thought process is still there because you have the same needs. But can you maintain the positions that we had you get into that will get you those needs under higher intensities? And yesterday you did.
And I like that. It's just it's incredibly intriguing to me, this notion that human beings lose movement options either via physical structure or secondary training adaptations, lifestyle factors. And then it kind of, and I say this as a physical therapist who makes these changes on a daily basis, it shocks me that anything that we do has the power to override whatever stimulus came before to lead to that decrease in variability.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you're looking at reps, time, all that stuff.
Right. It's almost, to think anything in the gym could actually have that prolonged of an effect. I mean, it also brings up the issue of, in a perfect world, nobody would need activities to regain movement options. That would be the goal, right? You just walk into the gym and you train, and your body adapts to the training with no deleterious secondary consequences. That's obviously not the world that we live in.
Yeah.
But it does seem like some people need a far less far lesser volume of these reset low level type of activities,
Sure.
and they can kind of progress away from that over time.
Yeah.
Whereas some people, for whatever reason, need that consistent manual therapy stimulus or consistent low level stimulus in order to make these changes stick.
Yeah. Well, I think the key is the body has to deem it meaningful and novel and salient. And I'll give you an example. If, let's say you witness something terrible happen, anything, you could, like something of 9/11 proportions, and it happened right before your eyes. You would remember that for the rest of your life, and it might be just one moment, one instance.
Right.
And that could shape and shift everything that you thought before that. And I remember when I listened to Lorimer Moseley, he was talking about, or I think my buddy Eric was talking about how taking NSAIDs could impair learning. And Lorimer gave the analogy, if someone shot a gun right by you, you would remember that happened, even if you were dosed up on NSAIDs.
Sure.
So if it's meaningful and novel enough, and I give dramatic examples, but if it's meaningful and novel enough, I think it could still lead to long-lasting changes.
Right.
Right. Now, does that mean like the equivalent of you doing quadruped breathing is something like witnessing a horrific event? No, but your body might deem it novel and meaningful enough that it does remember that, and it does stick for some people.
Yeah.
So my point by bringing that up is we just don't know what's going to cause the issue to stick, whereas some people might need the continual reinforcement over and over and over again to get meaningful change.
Something that like David Gray and Gary Ward, we'll link them in the show notes.
Yeah, which will be found out,
talk about all the time is, essentially that same thing, putting people in positions, but then if the nervous system likes that position, it'll remember that position. And there's no need to revisit it as long as that's what it reaches for the next time it tries to solve a particular like environmental or movement task. And that kind of makes some sense to me, because if we think again about the genesis of these like maladaptive postures and positions, they are trying to solve a problem. Get air in, maintain your ability to view your monitor while you're sitting in a chair. They don't emerge for no reason. Everybody, this is a Seth Oberst quote, but everybody's body is doing exactly what it needs to do.